Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be looking at an introduction to products and services. So my name's Jackie, I'll be taking you through today's session, but we do have on hand Michael in the background who's there to answer any questions that you may have today. So just before we begin, quick introduction to the session. We're using GoToWebinar, so I can see some of you have been on our sessions previously. Do recognise a few of your names there, but if you are new to the sessions, just to let you know that you will be on mute, so you can submit any of your questions across to us via the questions panel, and that icon to open that up looks like a speech bubble with the question mark in the middle there. So please do use that option to send any questions across to Michael. Don't feel you've got to wait to the end of the session. Keep them busy during the session, pop them as they come to mind today. We do have a handout for today, so that you can download a copy of that using the icon that looks like a document with the folded over corner. It's going to go back a slide because my slides are the wrong way around there, but just to show you what we're going to cover today. So today really is an introduction to products and services. We're hoping to build on that over the next few weeks with some additional topics on top of that as well. So we're going to look at why would you use products and services. Then we're going to look at stock items, non-stock items, and service items. So looking at the difference between those three different options that you have. We'll also look at some of the features of a stock item, and then we'll be looking at file import. We can show you how to, or where you can find support for file import if you have those product records stored elsewhere. We'll show you why it's a good idea to use products and services to help you with saving time on your invoices. We're also going to look very briefly at adjustments in and adjustments out as well. We'll then look at what's coming up in the next week. So next week we are going to do another topic which is going to build on today's content. Now, just before we begin though, I do like to do a poll. I like to find out a little bit around those who are joining us today. So I do want to just pop this on the screen there just to find out whether or not you're currently using the products and services module. So it should be on your screen or appearing any second now, asking you, do you currently use the module? So if you just pop in yes or no, and like I say, it gives us an idea of, how many people are actually using the feature. So I'll just let that run for a few more moments. See if we can get a few options across there. Fabulous, they're starting to come through there now. Excellent. Okay, so we've hit the 70% mark, which is where I like to be before I close the poll. So if I'm honest, at the moment, it was for a second just straight 50-50. It has just tipped into 53% no, 47% yes. So thank you again for giving us that insight into how you're using the software there. Just close that down and pop the screen back on for you. There we go. Okay, so why would we use products and services? So this is quite often something that we may have to our welcome team or teams when you're new to Sage, asking about which features you should be using and why would they be beneficial to you. So if you're using the products and services module, the first one people will use it for is for stock control purposes. So if you do have stock as part of your business, then the products and services option can keep a track of your stock for you. What it also means is that when you're using things like invoicing, orders, quotations, you can pull that information through automatically. So you don't have to keep retyping or rekeying the same information in time and time again. So it should help to streamline your processing as well. Even if you're using something like a service, you can still populate that with information that will pull through onto invoices and orders for you. It's also great if you've got someone new or not as experienced, so they don't have to keep rekeying the same information across, but also pulls things like the cost price and the sales price across for you as well. So it can reduce errors when you're assigning things like product sales price because it's already held within the record. You're not having to remember how much everything costs. And there are circumstances where you might have items that are a one-off. You don't actually want to hold them in stock, but you're going to sell them as a one-off. So we do have things like special item codes, etc., that you can be using for one-off items in those scenarios as well. So you're probably very familiar with what the products and services module looks like, but for those of you that aren't, we're just going to jump into a demonstration now and show you exactly how that looks. Okay, so for the purposes of today, I've created a company with very few records in for the time being, but this is the products and services feature. Now, this is available across all levels of the software, but to varying degrees. So if you're on Essentials, you will have access to products and services, but your options will be fewer than you would be if you were on Professional. So as you can see here, I've started to build up my list of my products, and they're all stored within this window for me, regardless of their product type. So there's 3 different product types that we're going to go through, and I'm going to go through each one individually just so you can see the differences and the benefits of using each particular one. So the first one I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into new. Now we have 2 ways of creating a new product record from within the software. We can use the new option, which just gives us the product record, and we can fill in as much or as little information as we want. But we do also have the option for the wizard. So if you want to go through the wizard process, if I'm honest, my preference is the new option. The wizard just goes through step by step through the sales details, purchase details, etc. So I'm going to stick to new for the time being, just so you can start to see the format of a product record. So the first thing we need to do is assign a product code. And this is where it's really important to consider your product naming structure before jumping into this. So quite often when I used to be on the one-to-one team, dealing with customers who've used the program for quite some years, there was always a regret about the format they used with their product codes. So I normally recommend, if you're going to create a product code, create something with the name in there or something that's easily searchable. Quite often they would create a product code which was numerical, which means you have to remember the number before you can search for it. So I always try and say keep it alphanumerical where you can. So for this, I am literally going to keep this as simple as possible. I'm going to call this stock item 011. And in my description, this is where I can put as much description as I like in here. And this will pull through onto invoices for me. So the more detail I put onto there, the more it will pull through automatically. Now I mentioned item type. We do have 3 different types. So we've got stock, non-stock, and service items. So I'm going to create this one as a stock item, which means it's technically assuming I have that item in to sell. So what it will do is it will record stock movements for me. The other 2 options I'll come to in just a moment. But this is the one that you would use if you're wanting to look at stock control and you want to see how much you've got in stock and do things like stock takes, etc. So I'm just going to call this something simple like stock item. And then we've got the option for the category. So you can set up different stock categories, and you can do this within settings and company preferences. Sorry, settings and configuration, apologies. So you can set up your own categories. So you might want to categorize your products further. And this is really just for reporting purposes that you can categorize them. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the ins and outs of each of these options, but you can put as much or as little in here. The only part that you have to put in to a product is the product code. That's the only one that is the essential field. I am going to highlight something, however, that is only in use when you're using a stock item, and that's the status section at the bottom. So this is where it's recording how many I've got in stock, how many I've got free, how many of those stock items are actually in stock but have been allocated to an order or to a project, and also how many I've got on order. So if I'm using things like the purchase order module, I can start to see how many I've actually got on order. So that's the section there that will be in use if you're using stock, and you'll notice if you're using non-stock or service items that those are grayed out. The other thing as well is also to enter things like your sales price into the software as well, because again, when you come to pull that through to the invoice, it will automatically populate that for you. So I'm just going to put an example in here. Item is £110. Things like your last cost price, they update as you use the purchase order module. Okay, so you could put an item in here if you wanted, or a figure in here, but it will automatically populate as you start to use other modules. So I'm going to save that for the time being. And as you can see, that has created a stock item for me in my list. So I'm going to go back and create another one. And we've got an item here. And this time I'm going to create this as a service item. Okay, so a quick question has come through here, just around, we've got different rooms for hire. Could we, is there any option for things like that? So this is potentially something you could use a service or a non-stock item for, because they're not items that you physically hold in stock, but you still want to retain the information, looking at things like the price and also the description as well, you might want to keep very similar. So I might just use that as an example, to be honest. So I'm going to just create a product code called room hire. And I'm going to create this as a service. And I might put it in as room hire per hour. Again, there's not a sort of set way that you have to use this. You can use this exactly how you wish to do so. It could be per afternoon or per day. I'll just put room hire per hour in, and I'm just going to pop a random rate in there for the time being. So this is a service item. So everything else here is you're able to enter something into, apart from the status section, because we can't put a service into stock. So you'll find the same with the non-stock items as well. So this tends to be things, just to give you some other examples, as well as if you're doing something like labour. So if you've got lots of products that you're maybe fitting, or my example in a moment is paving slabs. Once you're fitting them, you could still set up a labour service item, so you can also add that on to your invoices as well. So I'm going to just save that for the time being. And I'm going to do one more, which is my non-stock item. And trying to find a real life example of how you would use this is sometimes tricky, but non-stock can be used instead of a service item. In particular, if you're on essentials, you won't have service items, but you will have non-stock items. Very similar, you just don't record any stock movements in or out of your software. But I'm just going to create this one, non-stock. And in the example I've given in just a moment, I've used it for things like sand or items that are stock, but I don't really want to record the stock movements in and out, for example. So I'm going to call this one non-stock, just to keep it nice and easy once we're looking at the items there. And again, I'm just going to pop a little price in there of £50 per kilogram, for example. And again, the status section is grayed out there. So that's it, quite easy to add them in. It's just really thinking about how can I use these different stock items to be relevant to my particular business and my particular situation. So quite often people are saying, I don't want to use products and services because we don't have stock, but there is the ability to use it even if you're not using stock items. So you've got the service and the non-stock items in order to do that. So I just wanted to show you next how easy it is to use them once you've got them set up, and also the impact once you're actually using them. So I'm going to create an invoice next. Now the same really goes for things like your purchase orders, your sales orders, all of the information pulls through for you, but I just want to then be able to record some movement on my stock item. So if I pop into invoices and credits, so it's particularly useful if you're using the invoices and credits feature. I want to now create a new invoice using those stock and non-stock items. So I'm going to go into new invoice, and here I'll just create a new customer. And save. So I've selected my customer. So automatically, as soon as I select my customer, what that should do, if I've got any address information for that customer, is pull through all of their address details automatically for me. If it is a customer that you haven't got the details for yet, and you've maybe just received it on an invoice or an email or a letter from that customer, we do have a fantastic new feature, which I'm going to highlight to you, which is going to be available in version 28.1, which is due in mid-June. We do have this option here to paste the whole address in. So if I did have the address somewhere else, I could copy it, click paste, and it would paste the address in for me. But coming back to today's session, what I can now do is I can create an invoice using those products and services. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't all have to be stock, they don't all have to be services. I can do a mix of each of them. So I'm going to do this with an example that I created earlier, which is someone doing some paving in my garden. So I'm going to go and select my options. So first of all, I'm going to pop on my paving slabs. So I've ordered a particular type of paving slab, and as you can see there, I've popped a lot of information into the record. So rather than me having to remember measurements and names, colors, things like that, it's all held in the the product record for me. It's also pulling through things like the part number, and I can add if there was if there was a price on there, which there is, it's also pulled that through for me. So at the click of a button, I've now populated the first line of my invoice with all of that information. So all I really need to do is pop in the amount and add that on. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to pop on my labour, because they're doing some labour for me. So again, I've got a labour service item created, and I have popped a price on there per hour. So again, I just need to pop in how many hours they're going to be working for, and it will automatically calculate the price for me. Finally, I'm going to pull in my non-stock item, which in my case was some sand. Again, there's a lot of information on that sand, particular type of sand that we're using. So it's pulled all of that information through for me at the click of a button. So I'm just going to pop 10 in there as well. So that's been able to add all of those to the invoice for me. And that's why I would recommend, if you're using a regular service, you've got services that you offer, could be things like if you're a plumber doing things like boiler services, anything like that, any services can be set up and the information's already there. So I'm going to save that. It saved me a lot of work, a lot of retyping, a lot of having to find out measurements, etc., to make sure the description is detailed enough. And I'm going to save that there. So that adds it to my invoice list. Now what I'm going to show you next, I'm going to show you how to update ledgers and show you what happens if you try to use a stock item when you haven't yet got any in stock. So if we look at my products and services again, as you'll notice, I have a quantity in stock. So for service items and non-stock items, it doesn't matter if there's none in stock. But if I try to take an item out of stock when I don't have any in stock in the beginning, that's going to cause me some issues. So I just wanted to highlight that difference between the stock items. So I'm just going to update my invoice to the ledgers. And just wait for it to generate the report. And as you can see, because I've used a product item that doesn't have any stock in stock yet, it's telling me it can't update to the ledger. So that's the important thing that you need to be looking at. Just checking you can see my screen there, because just someone asking, should we be able to see the invoice you've just created? So the invoice is just there. Just check that you can see that one. It's still on the screen there. So we need to fix that first before we can update this invoice to the ledgers. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that we can do in order to pop some items into stock. So I'm going to pop into products and services, and like I say, I only really need to focus on those items that are my stock items. So in this case, it's the bottom one there and this one here. So what we have as a very simple route of bringing stock in is we've got an option to adjust in, or if we were trying to adjust out because we've maybe put too much stock in, then we can do an adjustment out. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to adjust them in. So this is one way of getting stock in. Another way of getting stock in is to use the purchase order module. Now, that is only available on the professional version. Okay, so if you don't use professional, you don't have purchase orders, this is the way that you would need to be bringing your stock in. So all I've got there is I've highlighted the 2 stock items, got them in the list, I've highlighted them so they've pulled through to the adjustments window, and I can pop in the quantity that I'm bringing in. So I'm going to say in this case 1,000. Again, it's picked up the cost price for me from the record based on the last time. If this has changed because I've gone to a different supplier or because everything's increasing at the moment, unfortunately, then I can actually change the cost price. So I could just change that if I needed to. For my other stock item, I haven't got a cost price in there yet, so I can still add this in. So I'm going to pop in 50 and just say 50 in there at the moment. So if I save that, as you'll see now, the quantity in stock has adjusted. So it's starting to reflect my true items in stock. Just to show you, we go into my paving slabs product record and into activity. It's a little bit like your customers or suppliers. It starts to build up an activity of the transactions in and out of that particular item. So there I've got an AI for adjustment in. Now, if I was to look at things like my labour and go into the activity there, you'll see no matter how much I use those on invoices, there'll never be anything in the activity on here because there's nothing to adjust in or out. So let's go and try and update that invoice to ledgers again. So I'm just going to update to ledgers again, try and get that to complete. And now because I've got enough in stock, I can actually complete that and it will be impacting my customer record. So quick question there is, can you create the adjustment without the cost price? So that moves very nicely onto something that is important about products and services if you're going to be using it for stock valuation. So if you're using stock and you want to at any point be able to do a stock valuation, and that doesn't matter if that's next week or next year, you do need to make sure that the cost price is always entered correctly. So you could enter it with a 0 cost price, but it does mean things like the product valuation, I think it's the retrospective product valuation report, which you might not get into at the moment, but you might want that down the line, will always be incorrect. So I always say best practice is if you're going to start using the stock feature, you never know down the line how far into stock you're going to go. So always make sure that you've got the correct cost price whenever you're prompted to on any adjustments in, out, or goods in, goods out transactions. So I would definitely recommend making sure that you've got that in. What you'll notice as well is I did just click on adjustment in when I was on a labour item, and again it won't let me do it. So it recognises that that particular feature doesn't really work for that particular item that I've got highlighted. So it will only let me do an adjustment in or out on stock items. Now another way you could do an adjustment in is to do a stock take. So at the top of the screen, you do have an option for a stock take as well. And what this allows you to do again is to select those items that are stock items. And it's basically an adjustment in all in the same window. So if I just select my 2 stock items again, and this allows me, it's a bit like doing a real stock take. So it recognizes how many I actually, sorry, I have to put in how many I've actually got. So at the moment, the Sage software thinks I've got 990. Now, if I was to do a stock take and realize actually I've only got 980, what I would do then is I would pop in 980, overwriting the 990, and it then tells me it needs to do an adjustment of 10. And it'll do an adjustment in or out depending on which way the transactions need to go. So that's a different way of doing an adjustment in or out, but that's a stock take that you can do. So next, I just wanted to show you, if you do actually have all of your products held somewhere at the moment, of how you could potentially get those into your software. So we do have the ability to do a file import into your product records. So just wanted to show you, first of all, where you can find the template and just explain that template a little bit for you. So if you're in your software and you go into Help and then into About, just wait for the page to load. What you're looking for is your program directory. Within your program directory, you click on there, you'll then see a folder called Import Templates. So within here, these are all the items that can be imported into your software. So you may be aware that you can import transactions, you can import your customers or suppliers if you're coming from a different software, but you can also do your product records as well. So if you are considering moving to Sage for stock control away from something else, if you can get it into an Excel format, great. That will take a lot of the legwork out for you. So it's the product record full template, and I'm just going to open this up for you. Now, I'm not going to go through a full import for you, unfortunately, because we did a session yesterday on file import, and it took half an hour alone just to go through one file import. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. And it's not that it takes a time, it's just so we can explain it in depth for you. So what this template does is it shows you what can be imported into Sage. So if I expand on this, all of these different items can be imported. You don't have to import all of these. The only thing you have to import is the stock code. Anything else is really a bonus for you because it's going to save you having to enter them manually. So you can enter your stock code, and all of this, the rest of it is optional. Now, this is just a template. As long as you've got the information in an Excel format, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same order as this if you don't want it to be, because when you go through file import, you can map the fields. So if your stock code was in fact in column Z, when you come to map it, you can say in column Z is the stock code. But this is just to show you an example of all the things that can be imported. And also, if you hover over each item, it tells you the format that each cell must be in as well. So if you're worried about, if you've got incorrect formats, it does tell you which format will need to be in. Right at the end, which didn't make sense to me when I was double checking this, is the item type. So that's in column U. And here you can select 0, 1, or 2, and that is in the order that it is in the software when you drop down within the product and services module. So if I just pop into here, so stock item, non-stock service item is how that would be shown in your file import. So to import, once you've got a file that you want to import, you can use the option of file and import, and that will pull the data in for you there. So that is an option. Otherwise, you can go and set them up all manually, but bear in mind you might have hundreds, if not thousands, of different stock items there as well. I think a question did just come through there around how it impacts your profit and loss or your nominals. So it is important to note as well that the products and services module, the adjustments in and out that we've processed at this point have no impact whatsoever on the nominal structure. Okay, only thing that you can do that will impact both your stock and your nominal codes is to use things like invoicing, sales order processing, and also purchase order processing. So they take care of both sides, both the stock and also the nominal codes as well. Okay, so we're coming towards the end, so we're just going to have a look at the PowerPoint, pop back into the summary for today's session. Keep your questions coming across. We will hang on till quarter two if the questions keep coming. I just wanted to go through another couple of features there as well, explain one more additional feature for you. Okay, so we mentioned how if you're using stock, you need to have items in stock before you can use the invoicing module. Now, I did want to mention this feature because quite often people stumble across it and begin to use it without really realizing the impacts again. So it sort of relates back to that question earlier around not putting the cost price in. There is a feature in the software which allows you to activate negative stock, which means that you could technically go into negative stock figures. Again, if you do select this option, which you can find in settings, company preferences, and then parameters, and it's in the other section here, it means that your stock can go into negative figures. And if you ever do want to use those product valuation reports, again, it can cause you issues. So I do recommend personally, if you're going to use stock, not to use the allow negative stock feature, okay? Because really, if you've got stock, you should never be in a negative stock situation. But I did just want to highlight that to you because quite often I've come across customers who've activated that, thought about using it for a while whilst it gets to grips with the feature, and then actually it's caused them issues down the line when they've come to run valuation reports. So just a quick heads up on there. So just to summarize, the reasons why you will be using the products and services module is to make your life easier. It's to make pre-population of your invoices, orders, quotations much easier and much more streamlined. It prevents you having to rekey the same information, so it should reduce errors and also reduce the amount of errors coming through from different cost prices being entered. So it's great for your customers as well if they're always getting charged the same price. Okay, so just have a quick look at the questions there. We're just over past there. See if there's anything else that we need to cover there. No, I think he's keeping up to date with them so far. So we'll just have a quick chat about next week. So I mentioned next week we're going to build on some of the content that we've covered today. So we've talked about very basic movements in and out of products and services. Next week, Michael's going to be looking at purchase orders. So purchase orders links very nicely into stock. It's a way to process stock coming in to your business. So Michael's going to show you that, and it'll show you a few different stock transactions on top of the adjustments in and adjustments out that we've shown you today. So that's next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Straight afterwards, we're back on again, and we're going to be doing one of our most popular webinars this year, which is what's new in version 28.1. I've shown you a very sneak peek this afternoon. There's lots and lots of great features in there. It's one of the first times we're really mega excited about this. I've come running home to tell everyone about some of these features, so please do join us for that session to see what we're talking about. There are some excellent features in there. So that will be straight afterwards at 3 p.m. next Wednesday as well. Just to show you a couple of other things just before you do leave, if you are looking for any of our recordings of previous sessions, just come out of there for 1 second, apologies, pop into our help center. So within your software, into help and then about, and within here, sorry, help and then help center, I've gone too far. Within here, this is where we've got all of our articles. So if you've got any queries around for things like stock take, adjustments in, adjustments out, stock items, you can type in here and it will bring up articles relating to the topic that you've typed in. What you can also do is type in the word webinars, and here you'll be able to sign up for those exciting webinars next week. But you can also look at the recordings of previous sessions. So we have done things around stock, sales orders, etc. You can catch up on those as well. So you can see what's coming up and also what we've already covered too. So I'm going to put myself on mute in just one moment. When you leave the session today, you will be prompted for some feedback. On top of that, we are looking for new topics. So if you do find that today has been very basic level on products and services, and you want to see a little bit more, getting a little bit more in depth, pop something on there just to let us know exactly what you're looking for so that we can add that onto our list of potential topics as well. But yes, any feedback is more than welcome also. So in the meantime, though, I'm going to just pop myself on mute just to see if any final questions come over. If you are leaving us, though, thank you very much. Take care, and we will hopefully see you next Wednesday at 2 or 3 p.m. But have a fantastic long weekend if you're going to get the opportunity to join it. Enjoy it. And we'll be back in a few minutes before we end the session there. Okay, a great question has just come through there. You've probably just seen me activating Foreign Trader in order to try and demonstrate this one for you. So it's how we'd add a euro cost price to a product when we're selling it out in sterling, please. So the key thing to notice is I've just activated Foreign Trader, so I do have Foreign Trader set up on here, but the stock item, regardless of what currency it comes in as, will always be held in pounds. So it's really when you're using stock, you'll be needing to use the the purchase order module. And when you're using the purchase order module, at that point, you would bring it in with a rate that may be euros, for example, but at that point, it would use your rate to convert it back to the sterling value within your Sage software. So your Sage software and your product in here, the value would always be a sterling value. Then when you sell it, if you were to sell it to a UK customer, it would sell it in sterling for you. But it is something we do have a few questions on. So your stock item will always look at in your base currency, which normally would be sterling. It'll be the product purchase order that you'd be looking at, making sure that you put the correct rate on at that point in time. I hope that answers your question there. I went to frantically activate Foreign Trader and then forgot I really needed to think about adding some customers or suppliers first to fully demonstrate it for you. But that's kind of the gist of it. So there's another question there around is there an easy way to find a product you can't remember? I've done this plenty of times myself, don't worry. But yes, you can use the quick search and you could type in, if you can just remember one word from that product, it will bring up all the products that contain that word. The same with if you've got a list of customers and all you can remember is that you've dealt with someone called John, for example, it will bring up all of the records that contain that word John somewhere in it. So the quick search is a really good feature for that one there. So yeah, Jenny, if you want to join us for the purchase order session next week, we'll go into purchase orders in a bit more depth. So the link for registering for other webinars, it will be in your follow-up email today. So that'll come in about an hour after we end today's session. So keep an eye out for that one. If not, then do just go into your software and then help center. Type in the word webinars and it will bring up the registration page for all of them there. So I will be sending it automatically in an hour's time. But if you don't find that one for any particular reason, just come and type in the word webinars onto the help center and it'll take you there. Okay, so I think Michael's just finishing up on a question there. Give him a few moments to finish up. Fabulous. Okay, well, we'll leave it there for today. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Again, just have a fantastic long weekend and we'll see you all hopefully next week. Bye for now.